Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. It is Saturday and it is time to try and tackle this cooling leak again. So what I'm going to do today is start with pulling the tank and thermostat housing off. I did get the O-rings from CSR. Side note, it is a ripoff to get them from CSR. It was like $33 shipped to have these O-rings sent. They're listed as $19.99 on their site, but they kill you in shipping. I took the ones I received, went to the local hardware store, and found the same size O-rings at the hardware store for significantly less. So just a little tip there, when you get to, if you're going to use this CSR Performance housing, I would go to the hardware store and buy some backup O-rings on your own instead of having to spend the insane amount of money to get them from CSR. So just note that. So as I said, I'm going to start tearing this down. I'm going to use suction gun, pull out whatever coolant I can from the tank, and then I'll start disassembling everything. All right, so everything is apart, and I got the thermostat out and whatnot again. Working on cleaning up the mess. Spent a good 40 minutes trying to find one of the bolts that fell out when I was taking it out. That was a blast. And you can see the parts are here. And I started thinking, I looked at this kit that they sent me in the mail, and this kit has 4 O-rings. When I got this thermostat, it only had 3 O-rings. One that goes right there, and then the one that you can see around where the thermostat is, and then the other one would go on the neck that screws into there. That's what it came with. Now that I'm seeing there are 4 O-rings here in this large diameter but thinner thickness one, that fits perfectly on this neck in a little groove that is machined in here. I'm thinking that I've been missing an O-ring the whole time, and maybe that's where my leak was coming from. So when I go to reassemble this, being that this O-ring fits perfectly on there, I'm going to try and wrap it around and put it on there and use that as an additional seal, because that would probably fit very nicely in that little pocket there and just prevent any other liquid from coming out. Now, based on what I could tell, it did seem like it was leaking from like right here where my finger is. The water was running out, or the coolant was running out along the bottom. But again, if it was getting past this flange, I mean, that could very well, be what was part of it. I don't know. It's hard to say. So either way, I'm going to go over. I did get a 320 sanding block, so I'm going to go over and do some more scuffing of both of these flanges just to make sure I can get a good seal. But I do think I am going to reinstall it with that 4th ring. These things don't come with any instructions, and there's nothing on the website to help you out, so it's a guessing game. So there's no way I would have known that it was missing an O-ring. But being that they're sending it now with a 4th O-ring, I believe that is part of what my problem has been this whole time, and why I've had these leaks and have had to take this thing apart multiple times. So I'm going to get to work on cleaning things up, and I'll get back with you once I'm done. All right, a little update. Disregard what I said in my last segment regarding that 4th O-ring. I put it together after cleaning things up. I tried assembling it that way, and that's not going to work. It would have the center swivel section sticking out too far, and then the O-ring for the bypass hose would not seal. So I guess it was right to begin with. So take that back. So what I've done so far is I went over this flange, the back side of it, with a 320 sanding block just to make sure there were no imperfections or anything that may be causing it to not sit where it's supposed to sit. So I did that for a little while. Hopefully it took a little bit off, and maybe it gives it a little more room to put pressure on the O-ring. Also with this, I cleaned up the O-ring lip on the very edge, went over it with the same sanding block just to make sure there was nothing there. And then the actual high spot, went over that for a while with the sanding block to just maybe take it down a little bit, make sure it's not causing the O-ring to not sit flush on the intake manifold flange. So next thing I'm going to do is start messing with the intake manifold flange, going over it with the sanding block, just trying to smooth it out some more, and then we'll go from there. Progress update. Started going to town on this with the 320 block I got, and I think the JB weld that I'd put in kind of peeled out when I did that, or maybe it failed when this thing leaked. I don't know. Maybe it just never stuck. I have no idea. But you can see, you know, the pits are kind of back. Went to town on it for a while at 320. Wasn't really getting anywhere fast, so I actually dropped down to 220 on a piece of wood. Definitely starting to remove the pitting. You know, I think it looks worse than it feels when you run your nail over it. But those ones at the bottom there, those definitely seem to be the deepest, causing the issues. I'm willing to bet it is this one right here, which is causing my leaking. I can still ever so slightly catch my nail in it, but that's about where water seemed to be seeping through the O-ring. So I'm concentrating on the lower portion, also concentrating on where the bolt holes are in case this thing is kind of somewhat deformed and those bolt holes are keeping from the pulling the other flange tight. I want to make sure that I'm not just working down inside the bolt holes. I want to get that area flat as well. So still working on it, but that's where I'm at currently. All right, well, here we go. After a couple hours of sanding, using a lot of 220 and then covering or going back after it with 320, there are no grooves that I can feel with my nail or anything like that when I go over it. Hopefully it's not now like wavy to the point where it leaks, but it should seal at this point in time, I would really hope. So I'm going to go over it just one more time with 320 just to make sure everything is really good and smoothed out as far as any like grooves from the 220, and then should be able to start putting this back together. I did go ahead and glue the thermostat into the housing with silicone, so that's setting up right now, and then I can start reassembling this. All right, we are back together. I went ahead, I used that Dow 111 on the O-rings just to keep them lubricated. I did clean the flanges off really good with brake cleaner before installing. It's all new O-rings, 2 new rings in the flange, and then 1 new ring around the neck that comes off of the tank. And I did also this time put anti-seize on the 2 bolts that hold the flange on, as I hadn't in the past, and I was thinking, well, maybe there was a little binding or something like that that might be causing some issues as far as torquing properly. So I did that. I am going probably to pressurize this. I have a pressure tester, same thing I used for the brake system. I have an adapter for the radiator cap. I think I'm going to throw that on here and see if it'll hold pressure and go from there. All right, been a little while. Didn't see any seepage of air from the vacuum pump thing, so I'm hoping we're good to go. I went and put some coolant in the reservoir. I didn't completely fill it up because I didn't want to waste a ton, but I got it to the point where there was some sitting in the bottom of the reservoir. So I'm gonna let it sit probably overnight, check it tomorrow, see if there's any signs of leaking. If not, I'll put some more coolant in it, top it up, see what happens, and go from there. So we will see if we finally have won this battle. All right, so it is the next day, and I'm out here in the garage, and not sure if you can see it in this video, pretty hard to see with the lighting and whatnot, but there is fluid in the little divot there. I've got another pull starting. So still leaking coolant. Again, not that much. It's probably less than it was last time, but it is nonetheless still leaking. So I am now done with messing around with this O-ring seal on this thermostat. What I'm going to do, I did some research online. My options and whatnot, I'd have to, buy some pretty significant parts and whatnot to retrofit and things like that. I like the tank that I have right now. It seems to work pretty well. The layout seems to work. I think I'm going to just use the old housing that was on here, the blue thermostat housing from CSR, clean all the old silicone off of it, put it back on with a paper gasket and silicone the crap out of it on both sides and just ramrod this thing back together. I think I'm just fighting a losing battle with the flange on that intake manifold. I think it is just too pitted, and with all the sanding and whatnot, I just think there's too many imperfections that it probably is at the point where it would need to go to a machine shop to be straightened out to use an O-ring on it. I think, it's good enough where I could use the Right Stuff sealant and the paper gasket, and I'll make it work that way, and I should be leak-free using that. I looked into getting a replacement used lower intake manifold. They used to be like $75. They're now $300 and up for a Explorer or Cobra lower manifold, only the lower. It's even more if you want the whole setup. So everything's just shot up in prices. I thought about maybe, going with the Forte degas tank where that mounts on like the fender well. But that alone, that tank alone is like 180, and then the new hoses and whatnot, and it's not really what I'd want. I'd rather have the actual like FE style degas tank if I'm going to go with, go and replace it. So I'm thinking that's what I'm going to do for now, just to get this thing back together. I'm sick of fighting this fight. I've got the Right Stuff sealant. I've got a paper gasket that I'd ordered when I originally pulled this intake manifold, because I didn't realize it had this O-ring thermostat housing. And that's, basically how it was together when I pulled it all apart. It didn't have a gasket, but it was just slapped together using like the Right Stuff type sealer. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to start draining coolant out of this thing for, I think, the 4th time now, and start pulling it apart and just going this route. All right, update time. Got the thermostat housing and everything pulled off the front of the motor, letting that dry after cleaning it up, and then new mess of coolant because, every time you take it off, you make a mess. Here is the blue housing that was originally on the car when I purchased it, and that I pulled off, and this one was glued on. What I did is I went to town on it with a wire wheel, got all of the old silicone off of it and everything, so it's all cleaned up, sprayed it with some brake clean just to make sure there was no residue. Here is the swivel portion of it. Did the same thing, went over it to remove any silicone that was on it, went to put the thermostat in it, and it did not fit. So as you can see here, I had to grind the crap out of it, same as I did with the other one, to make it able to hold a thermostat. So now it is notched and ground down. The thermostat will sit in there flush like it's supposed to. So we now have a thermostat housing that can hold a thermostat. So I've gone and tried fitting the tank to it. I ended up having to go get a different size O-ring just to make sure everything fit right, because it looks like this one was designed to use a slightly thicker O-ring than the one that came with the newer style neck. So, and that's for the nipple or pipe that's coming off the bottom of the tank that goes in, that threads in right here. So anyway, that's where I'm at. What I'm going to do now is glue the thermostat into here so it doesn't fall out. Take some brake clean to the intake manifold, make sure it's good and clean. And then I am going to put a ton of the Right Stuff on this housing and install it on the car and let it dry overnight. So that is my plan of attack. All right, so here we are. The housing is reinstalled. You can see the silicone has been pushed through from it being tightened and torqued down. I've got the water tank where it needs to be, so I am going to let this cure overnight. Hopefully it gets good and solid cure to it, and then tomorrow I will try and put some water in it and cross my fingers and see what happens. So gonna end this video here on this nice suspenseful note. Next video that will be posted should have the results of this pain in my butt process that I've been going through. As I said, I have reached out. I did a lot of research. I found TD something or another. They sell a 90-degree billet neck, and then they call it a manifold that would bolt on and work similarly to this. So that's, something that's a possibility. I think it was designed by like Cobra Earl, something on those lines. I can't remember off the top of my head. So that's a possibility if this fails and I have to go with something different. Also reached out and was looking at Forte's site. Like I said earlier, I don't want to go with the fender well mount degas tank because that doesn't look accurate. He does have the Harrison setup, which is what the small block cars had. And if it came down to it, I could do that. I could use like a stock Mustang hose and a stock Mustang 90-degree upper and silicone that on, get rid of this multi-piece of junk, and then use the Harrison tank, which that basically plumbs into where the 90-degree bypass hose would be, and that would, you know, turn that into your fill tank slash degas tank. He also on his website has an FE tank. It's listed as out of stock, but it's the FE style tank, which is modified to fit a small block. That would be my ultimate preference. I love that style. That's really what I want on this. Questionable if it would clear the A distributor, the EFI distributor. Not sure if it would clear that or not. But he's looking into seeing if he can get more of those, because I do eventually plan on changing to a either Sniper or more than likely the Edelbrock multi-port but throttle body style fuel injection setup, just for that nostalgic look. That's one of the reasons I really didn't want to put too much work into this intake manifold, is I eventually plan on selling all of this Ford EFI stuff. So anyway, that's where I'm going to end this video. Next video you see should have the results. I'm really hoping it's happy results, but we will find out at that point in time. So hope you're finding this entertaining and informational. It's definitely been a total pain in my butt. Looking forward to getting it figured out and finalized, and I just want to drive this car. It's really frustrating that I've had it for 7 months now and I've not driven it other than a quick trip around the block to make sure it ran. So yeah, so if you're enjoying what you're seeing, getting some information from it and looking forward to getting more, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Definitely going to be a lot more to come on this car. Thank you for watching and have a great day.